It started with a whisper, one quiet sentence from Princess Charlotte that made a royal guard freeze mid-step. Moments later, that same guard shoved past senior aides, breaking every rule of palace protocol, all because Charlotte had quietly pleaded, "Don't leave me with her." Who was she talking about? Why did the guards react like they were responding to an emergency? And why did the palace corridors fall silent, as if everyone suddenly knew something wasn't right? This moment didn't just bend the rules, it shattered them. Before we dive in, if you love deep, emotional royal family stories that cut through the headlines and reveal what's really happening behind those palace doors, make sure to hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and it tells me you enjoy these kinds of stories. And hey, if you think anyone else will find this fascinating too, feel free to share it. The palace was unusually still that morning, one of those quiet, echoing moments where you feel the walls themselves listening. Senior aides moved through the corridors with carefully managed smiles, the kind that looked polite from a distance but tight up close. It was supposed to be just another routine family moment, a short walk from the nursery to a waiting room where Queen Camilla was scheduled to greet the children before a private family luncheon. But then Princess Charlotte said something soft, barely a whisper, just 5 words. Words that would stop a grown man in full stride. "Don't leave me with her." The royal guard closest to her, Sergeant Lennox, a man known for rigid professionalism and the kind of composure that made other guards call him the statue, froze as if someone had grabbed him by the spine. He didn't break posture, but something changed in his eyes. For a brief second, they flicked down toward Charlotte, then up toward the aides, as if assessing a threat none of them could see. One of the senior aides, Meredith Shaw, forced a laugh. "Sweetheart, it's just for a few minutes," she said, brushing a hand through her hair in that practiced, slightly nervous way she did whenever something unexpected happened. But Charlotte wasn't joking. She wasn't fussing. She wasn't even crying. She simply looked up with a calm, serious expression, the kind children use when they know they won't be believed but try anyway. "Please don't leave me with her." The corridor tensed. Even the younger aide, Tom, barely 24 and still starstruck by the royals, noticed the tension build like a storm cloud. Sergeant Lennox took one step forward. That alone was unusual. Guards don't step unless ordered. They don't break the invisible line of protocol. They certainly don't involve themselves in private conversations. But he did. "Ma'am," he said to the aide, "I'll escort the princess." Meredith blinked. "That won't be necessary. This is a family greeting, not—" Before she could finish, Lennox moved. Not aggressively, just decisively, with the posture of someone who had already made up his mind. He stepped between Charlotte and the aides, his gloved hand gently but firmly guiding the princess behind him. And then he did something almost unheard of inside those walls. He shoved past the aides at a quick, controlled, professional shove, one that made Meredith stumble a half-step sideways and Tom gasp aloud. "Sergeant," Meredith snapped, her composure slipping. "You can't just—" But Lennox wasn't listening, or rather, he was listening to someone else entirely. Charlotte, he leaned toward her just enough that only she could hear him. "You're safe," he whispered. Charlotte nodded once. Small, brave, but relieved. That's when Meredith's expression changed. She wasn't just annoyed now. She was uneasy, because Lennox wasn't the type to behave like this. He had served under both the Queen's Guard and the Wales family's protection detail. He had stood inches behind William during tense diplomatic moments. He had been trusted near royals during moments of private vulnerability. This was a man with an almost obsessive respect for rules. So what would make him break all of them at once? Meredith stepped forward again, lowering her voice. "Sergeant, we have instructions. Her Majesty is waiting." And then Charlotte said something that made the air temperature drop. "I don't want to see her today." The her wasn't named. She didn't need to. Everyone knew who was waiting. Queen Camilla. Tom swallowed. Meredith glanced toward the double doors at the end of the corridor. That entrance led to the small sitting room where Camilla was expecting them. A peaceful, light blue room with soft chairs, silver frames, and a bowl of mints she liked to offer the children. But for whatever reason, Charlotte dreaded going in there. "Princess," Meredith started carefully. "She'll be disappointed if—" No, Charlotte's voice cracked for the first time. Not dramatically. Not loudly, just enough to make Lennox's jaw tighten. He straightened. I'll take Charlotte back to her mother. You can't, Meredith hissed. We have a schedule, and lady. But Lennox stepped forward again. His voice stayed level, but the steel underneath it was unmistakable. With respect, ma'am, the princess is uncomfortable. The schedule can wait. There it was, a break in protocol strong enough to rattle even the paint on the palace walls. Tom's eyes darted nervously between Lennox and the closed sitting room doors. Meredith pressed her lips together, fighting the urge to cause a scene in front of the princess. Royal children weren't supposed to witness tension in the staff, and yet the tension was already thick enough to cut. Sergeant, if you walk away, I'll have to report it, Meredith warned. Lennox didn't flinch. Do what you must. If this had been any other workplace, that would have been the end of it. But this was the royal household, where loyalty, intuition, and quiet protectiveness held just as much weight as titles and hierarchy. Meredith hesitated. Tom stayed frozen. Charlotte clung to Lennox's coat subtly, like someone who found the one person she trusted in that moment. And then a sound. The click of a door handle. The sitting room door opened slightly. A voice drifted out, warm, polite, controlled. Are they coming in? It was unmistakably Camilla. Meredith swallowed, forced a smile and stepped forward, but Lennox beat her to it. He shifted his stance, angling Charlotte behind him as though preparing for a negotiation, not a greeting. We're on our way, Your Majesty, Meredith called out. But Charlotte tightened her hold on Lennox's coat and whispered again, barely audible, but full of fear this time. Please don't leave me with her. And this time, the aides didn't try to brush it off. They heard something in her voice, something that didn't fit with the sweet family narrative the public usually saw. Lennox made his decision. He didn't argue. He didn't ask permission. He simply turned and began walking Charlotte back toward the Wales family quarters. Meredith froze in shock. Tom opened his mouth, but no words came out. The palace corridor, so quiet before, now felt charged, like someone had struck a match in a room full of whispers. Camilla stepped into the doorway, just far enough for her silhouette to show, her expression unreadable. Where are you taking her? She called out, her voice sharper now. Lennox didn't turn around. Back to her parents, ma'am. Charlotte's small hand held on to his coat, not scared anymore, just determined. Camilla's eyes followed him as a guard, and the princess disappeared around the corner. For a moment, nobody breathed. Tom finally whispered, Is he allowed to do that? Meredith exhaled shakily. No, not at all. But deep down, even she understood, Lennox hadn't broken protocol for himself. He had broken it for a child who didn't usually ask for help. And in the palace, that meant something. That meant everything. Sergeant Lennox had worn a uniform for almost 2 decades, and in that time, he had carried out orders that would have shaken lesser men. He had stood guard during bomb threats, shielded royals from screaming protesters, and even once blocked a diplomat's drunken lunge toward Prince William without blinking. His reputation wasn't built on stories of bravado. It was built on one simple truth. He didn't bend rules. Ever. So when he escorted Princess Charlotte away from Queen Camilla, every single person who witnessed it knew something extraordinary had driven him to act. But who exactly was Sergeant Lennox? And why would a single whisper from Charlotte be enough to override years of training? To understand his decision, you have to look at the man behind the uniform. Lennox had joined the Royal Guard straight out of military service. People describe him as composed to the point of being unreadable. He was the type who stood still in the rain without flinching, who kept watching the freezing cold with the same calm expression he'd wear in the sun. His record was spotless. Commendations for discipline, loyalty, alertness, and flawless execution procedure. But there was one detail few outside palace walls knew. Lennox had a soft spot for children, not in the sentimental, overly indulgent sense, more in the deeply protective, quietly watchful way of a man who understood innocence was fragile and often overlooked. He wasn't married. He had no kids of his own. But years earlier, during an overseas deployment, he had once carried a terrified 5-year-old out of a collapsed building during an urban rescue. The child's faint grip on his collar stayed with him long after the mission ended. Since then, something in him sharpened whenever children were involved. even royal ones, especially Charlotte. She was the one child who greeted the guards with curiosity instead of shyness. The one who asked questions like, "Does your armor get hot?" Or, "Do you ever get bored standing so still?" She had once tried to mimic his posture during an event rehearsal, much to Kate's amusement. Lennox had smiled, his first visible smile on duty, according to the other guards. And so, when a child like that looked up at him with fear, instead of her usual spark, something in him reacted before protocol had a chance to catch up. Inside the palace, guards are trained to observe quietly. They see things the world never hears about. Subtle cues, shifts in tone, silent tensions between members of the household. Lennox noticed everything, but he never spoke of it. Guards don't gossip, not if they want to keep their positions. But he had noticed something change over recent months. Charlotte had grown unusually quiet around Queen Camilla. Not rude, not dramatic, just faintly withdrawn, like a child trying to shrink herself in someone's presence. It wasn't obvious to everyone, but Lennox had seen it. The way she clutched her hands behind her back when Camilla approached, the way she avoided eye contact, the way she stood closer to her brothers whenever the queen walked into the room. It wasn't fear exactly, more like unease, a sense of discomfort too subtle to report, but too persistent to ignore. Still, Lennox followed orders. He always did. If the princess was scheduled to spend time with Camilla, he escorted her. If Aide said everything was fine, he accepted it. A guard's job wasn't to question relationships within the family. It was to protect those relationships from the outside world. But today was different. Today, Charlotte had asked him directly. Children don't usually know the way to words like, "Don't leave me." They don't say that unless something inside them is screaming that something feels wrong. And those 5 soft words hit Lennox with more force than any shouted command ever could. He replayed them in his mind as he moved deeper into the palace hallway, guiding Charlotte safely away. Behind him, the atmosphere he'd left was beginning to ripple. Meredith, after recovering from shock, had stormed off to report the situation. Tom, unsure whether to follow her or stay put, lingered awkwardly by the sitting room door. Camilla had remained inside, the door half open, her expression unreadable. And that unreadability was exactly what made people uneasy. Camilla had a complex reputation in private spaces. Publicly, she smiled warmly, laughed easily, and handled engagements with grace. Privately, she was sharper, more direct, and occasionally impatient, especially when schedules fell apart or staff hesitated in their tasks. Some aides found her intimidating. Others defended her fiercely. It depended on who you asked. But children often see the truth in people faster than adults do, and Charlotte was no exception. Meanwhile, Lennox continued leading Charlotte to the quieter wing of the palace toward the Wales family apartments. The corridor lights reflected off polished floors, the silence broken only by the soft tap of Charlotte's shoes against marble. "Are you all right, princess?" he asked quietly. She nodded, but it wasn't convincing. "I just didn't want to go in there." He didn't push for details. It wasn't his place. But he crouched slightly so his voice was level with hers. "You did the right thing telling someone." Charlotte's eyes filled with a flicker of relief. "Will Mummy be mad?" "No," Lennox said firmly. "Your mother will want to know how you feel." That was the truth. Catherine had always been deeply attuned to her children's emotional well-being. She valued honesty from them, even difficult honesty. She had once thanked Lennox personally for stepping in when George scraped his knee during an event, praising his quick reaction and reassuring presence. And that memory reminded him of something important. Kate trusted him. William trusted him. If this turned into a disciplinary issue, he hoped that trust would count for something. But he also knew something else. By stepping between Charlotte and Camilla, he had crossed a line, a big one. A guard interfering in family dynamics, even with good intentions, was risky. Decisions like that sent shockwaves through the chain of command. Palace structures were delicate. The wrong move could fracture them. As he reached the private hallway leading to the Wales quarters, Lennox felt the weight of what he'd done pressing onto his shoulders. He wasn't afraid for himself. He'd face consequences if necessary. What mattered was Charlotte, her comfort, her safety, her sense of being protected. He knocked gently on the door. It opened seconds later, revealing a surprised but calm Catherine. Her eyes shifted from Lennox to Charlotte instantly. "Sweetheart, what happened?" Charlotte hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist. Kate's hand automatically smoothed her daughter's hair. Her other hand rose to her chest in a worried gesture. "Lennox, what's going on?" The guard stood tall. "Ma'am," she expressed that she didn't want to enter the sitting room. She seemed distressed. "I brought her to you." Kate's brow tightened ever so slightly, a flicker of concern mixed with something else. Something protective. "Did something happen in there?" she asked Charlotte softly. Charlotte shook her head. "No, I just didn't want to go." Kate nodded slowly. She didn't press. She didn't force. She just held her daughter close and whispered, "You're safe now." Behind them, William appeared in the hallway, sensing the tension instantly. "What's wrong?" he asked, eyes narrowing. Kate exchanged a brief look with Lennox, one that said this moment wasn't over, not by a long shot. And far down the corridor, out of sight, but not out of mind, Queen Camilla was still standing near the sitting room door, wondering why Charlotte didn't want to see her, and why Sergeant Lennox had chosen that exact moment to break one of the most sacred rules of royal protocol. The phrase kept echoing through the palace long after Charlotte had been carried safely into her parents' quarters. 5 soft words, gentle, almost shy, yet they hit harder than any raised voice ever could. "Don't leave me with her." For most families, a child saying they didn't want to be left with someone might spark a small conversation, perhaps a quiet check-in, maybe even a shrug. But this wasn't any child, and this wasn't any household. These were the walls where whispers turned into speculation, and speculation into silent storms. And Charlotte wasn't a child who normally resisted people. She was open, curious, polite to a fault, a small diplomat in her own right. So why those words? Why that fear? Why her? To understand the weight behind Charlotte's whispered plea, you have to step into the emotional undertow of royal life, the parts that never make it into glossy magazine spreads or ribbon-cutting photo ops. For children raised inside royal walls, intuition becomes a superpower. They can sense tension faster than adults because they don't have filters. They don't see titles. They see faces, tones, postures. And Charlotte, with her sharp eyes and perceptive nature, had been quietly tracking something the adults around her hadn't fully noticed. Something had changed in her interactions with Camilla. It didn't happen in a single moment. It built slowly, small pieces, scattered over weeks. It started with tone. Camilla had always been polite with the children, but lately she'd become more direct, not unkind, but brisk in a way that rubbed Charlotte the wrong way. She would correct her posture during formal events, remind her to stand still more often than necessary, and once even told her not to interrupt when adults were speaking, something that left Charlotte looking embarrassed. That alone wasn't unusual. Many grandparents did the same. But children feel the difference between guidance and disapproval. Charlotte felt disapproval. Then came the looks. Camilla had a habit, maybe unconscious, of watching the royal children during their lessons and rehearsals. Most of the time, she observed quietly, but occasionally, her gaze lingered too long, too critically, especially when Charlotte fidgeted or whispered to her brothers. And the princess noticed. One afternoon, during a rehearsal for a public engagement, Charlotte had accidentally stepped on the hem of her dress. Nothing major, but Camilla sighed, a small, irritated sound, hardly noticeable to most ears. But Charlotte heard it, and it stuck with her like a thorn. There were also the comparisons. Your brother stands straighter than that. Let's be ladylike now. You're getting a bit old for all this fussing. None of it cruel, none of it harsh. But children don't need harshness to feel discomfort. They only need inconsistency, warm one minute, cold the next, approval one day, impatience the next. Camilla wasn't intentionally intimidating her. Most likely, she didn't even realize how she came across. But Charlotte felt it, and because she respected adults, she didn't push back. She didn't complain. She didn't run to her parents with tales of discomfort. She did what so many quiet, sensitive children do. She stored it. layer by layer, moment by moment, until one day, the weight of it all became too heavy. That day was today. Earlier in the morning, Charlotte had overheard two aides mention she would be spending half an hour with Camilla before the luncheon. Not a big event, just a family greeting. But to Charlotte, it felt like a knot tightening in her stomach. She didn't make a fuss. She didn't argue. She simply grew quieter. Even George noticed. "You okay?" he asked her softly. Charlotte nodded, but she wasn't. And once they reached the corridor leading to Camilla's sitting room, the familiar unease returned like a shadow creeping up behind her. She felt her breathing change, smaller, thinner. She felt her hands get colder. And when Meredith announced, "Almost there," something inside Charlotte finally cracked. Fear doesn't always arrive with drama. Sometimes it slips out in the softest voice imaginable. "Don't leave me with her." There was no tremble, no tears, just honesty. The palace aides didn't understand the depth of it. Not fully, not immediately. To them, it sounded like the usual nerves of a child shy about formality. They didn't see the collection of quiet moments that had led here. They didn't see the tension Charlotte felt every time she had to be the perfect little lady. They didn't see the way Camilla's tone, though not cruel, made her feel judged. But Lennox saw it. A trained protector doesn't hear only the words. He hears the message beneath them, the fear behind them, the subtle plea children don't know how to express any other way. He saw the slight tremor in Charlotte's breath, the way she leaned subtly toward him, the way she kept her eyes down, not out of disrespect, but self-protection. And that's why he reacted. Not because he disliked Camilla, not because he thought she meant harm, but because children rarely ask for help unless they truly feel unsafe emotionally. And when a child whispers the truth, you listen. While Lennox escorted Charlotte away, something else stirred beneath the surface, something even the royal adults had never acknowledged openly. Camilla, despite her public warmth, carried a sternness that some children struggle with. Children feel energy more acutely than adults do. They don't care about crowns or titles. They care about tone, presence, comfort. And the truth was simple. Charlotte didn't feel comfortable around her, not in a dramatic way, not in a dangerous way, just uneasy. And the palace had a history with uneasy feelings, feelings people ignored, feelings that grew into fractures, feelings that, when dismissed, turned into future headlines. This time, Lennox refused to ignore it. Meanwhile, back in Camilla's sitting room, the Queen herself stood silently in the doorway, replaying what she'd heard. She wasn't oblivious. She had heard the child's tone. She had seen the guards' reactions. And somewhere deep inside, under the layers of poise and polished royal training, Camilla felt a sting of something unfamiliar. Was it guilt? Annoyance? Confusion? Even she wasn't sure. But she knew one thing. Charlotte didn't want to be near her, and that fact hit her harder than she expected. Camilla had spent years trying to soften public perception. She wanted to be seen as warm, steady, dependable. And she had tried, truly tried, with the children. So why did Charlotte fear her? Or perhaps the question was even harder to face. Had she done something without realizing it? Inside the Wales quarters, as Charlotte clung to her mother, the emotional puzzle pieces began shifting into place. Kate wasn't a woman who missed signs. William wasn't a father who dismissed concerns. Both of them listened closely when their children spoke, especially when they spoke softly. And Charlotte had finally spoken, not loudly, not tearfully, but honestly. "Don't leave me with her." Those words would set in motion a quiet storm inside the palace. A storm no one, not the aides, not Camilla, not even Lennox, fully understood yet. But they were about to, because when a child finally reveals the things she's been holding inside, the truth doesn't stay hidden for long. The palace slept under a quiet London sky, but inside the marble halls, tension crackled like lightning waiting to strike. Every guard felt it. Every servant sensed it. And deep in the heart of Buckingham Palace, behind a pair of polished oak doors, the fate of the monarchy was tilting on a knife's edge. Kate stood near the nursery window, breathing slowly, trying to steady her shaking hands. She had heard the whispers, The confession Camilla never intended her to hear. Words that stabbed the silence of the palace like a dagger. Words that explained everything. Words that made her blood run cold. And now, those words were no longer a secret, because in the hallway outside the nursery, the guards had heard them too. Sir Alden, the same guard who had blocked Camilla from entering hours earlier, stood at his post, jaw tight, spine like iron, his heart hammered, but his purpose was steady. He wasn't just guarding a room. He was guarding the future of the royal family. Inside, Kate touched her daughter's blanket, emotions swirling, fear, disbelief, heartbreak, and something else rising beneath it. Strength. A strength she didn't know she had until tonight. A strength she now realized she had been forced to find. Camilla stormed toward the nursery with the fury of a queen scorned, her heels clacking like a warning to the silent corridor. 2 more guards stepped in beside Sir Alden, creating a wall of unwavering loyalty. Her eyes narrowed. "Move," she commanded. "Ma'am." Sir Alden replied carefully. "The princess requested privacy." "I am the queen," Camilla snapped. "I outrank her." His face did not flinch. "With respect, your majesty, rank does not override threat." The hallway froze. Camilla's nostrils flared. "Threat? You think I am a threat to my own family?" Sir Alden didn't answer. He didn't need to. The entire palace had already heard the truth echoed down these walls. Camilla took a step closer. "If you do not step aside." "We won't," Sir Alden said quietly. A single moment of silence hung between them like a sword suspended in the air. Then Kate's voice broke through from inside the nursery. "Let her in." The guards turned, faces flashing with concern, but Kate's tone held no fear, only certainty. Sir Alden stepped aside, but his eyes stayed sharp, watching everything, ready for anything. Camilla entered the nursery, shutting the door behind her. The air inside felt colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves sensed the truth that had been unearthed. Camilla opened her mouth first. "So, you heard." Kate didn't turn. She continued adjusting her daughter's blanket. "I heard enough." Camilla's voice was tight, brittle. "It was never meant for you to know." Kate finally lifted her head, and the gentleness in her eyes was gone, replaced by something fierce and devastatingly calm. "You planned to separate me from my own children." Camilla swallowed. "It is not what you think. It is exactly what I think." Kate's words sliced the air. "You want to control the narrative, to control the future of this family. And you wanted to make sure the children closest to the crown were the ones you could shape." Camilla's jaw tightened. "You are emotional. You are making assumptions." Kate stepped closer, the soft glow of the nightlight casting a halo around her silhouette. "No assumptions, just truth." Her voice trembled, but not from fear, from fury held too long. "You wanted power, and for me to stand aside so you could take it." Camilla's expression flickered, just for a split second. The truth peeked through her carefully sculpted face. A truth she could no longer hide. Kate inhaled shakily. "You misjudge me." Camilla stiffened. "And what is that supposed to mean?" Kate's answer came like a storm breaking open. "It means I'm done staying silent." For the first time that night, fear flashed in Camilla's eyes, not fear of exposure, but fear of Kate, because she realized that the princess standing before her was no longer the quiet, polite wife of the next king. She was a mother, a fighter, and someone the public adored, without question. The one thing Camilla could never be. "Think very carefully," Camilla warned, "about the consequences of—" "No," Kate cut in gently. "You think about them." Her voice remained soft, but the conviction was thunder. "The people trust me. They always have. And if I speak, they will listen." Camilla's breath hitched. Kate stepped forward until they were only inches apart. "You will never again attempt to influence my children's future." Camilla's face hardened. "You think you can stop me?" Kate smiled, but it wasn't warm. "I don't have to stop you. The world will." Outside the nursery, the guards stood as silent sentinels. But their presence was more than protocol now. It was testimony. They had heard the truth, and the royal family was never the same once the guards learned secret, because guards talk to guards. Servants talk to servants. Whispers travel faster than light inside palace walls. By dawn, everything would be different. Camilla took a slow breath, gathering the shreds of her pride. You have no idea what you're unleashing. Kate's eyes glimmered with tears she refused to let fall. Maybe, but I know this. My children deserve safety, not manipulation. Camilla turned sharply. This is not over. Kate lifted her chin. Yes, it is. Camilla stormed out of the nursery, brushing past the guards without a word. But she felt it, the shift in the air. The guard she once ordered without question now looked at her differently, with suspicion, with awareness, with judgment. Sir Alden glanced at Kate through the doorway, waiting for her signal. She nodded. He bowed his head respectfully. And that was it, a quiet gesture, but a powerful one. The entire palace had chosen a side. As Kate held her daughter close, she whispered, "You're safe now. I promise." The moonlight slipped across her face, and in that soft glow, something new was born, an unshakable resolve. Outside the palace, London slept peacefully. Inside, a storm had broken. But for the first time in months, Kate felt free, because the truth was no longer in the dark. It was out, it was alive, and it was hers, forever.